So I have an acquisition, and now I'm going to go to RISE.
Yeah.
So you are now sitting in front of SAP telling them, okay, these are my number of users. We went from 1,800 to 4,200. And SAP is going, okay, wait, hold on. But in the system, you're only paying for 1,800. How is it 4,200? Like what is going on here? So that's a challenge for an auditor.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our number one priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the WBS Podcast. I'm Sam Gupta, your host and principal consultant at the independent ERP and digital transformation consulting firm Elevate IQ. ECC to S4 migration is never easy. There are several considerations, including differences in architecture, licensing, arrangement, and change management. But if you have been creative with your licensing arrangement in the on-prem setting, your experience might be even more shocking. The things you could do in the on-prem world, they might not be permitted in the new architecture. Also, just because you own your instance does not mean that you have rights to do whatever you want with licensing, increasing the odds of getting audited. In today's episode, our guest, Sana Asher, discusses the nuances of ECC to S4 migration. She touches on several concepts such as differences in the licensing and what customers need to know to be successful with migration. Finally, Sam and Sana debate a story of an acquisition and migration from PeopleSoft to S4 in a complex and regulated industry such as life science. Let me introduce Sana to you. Sana is an experienced business leader, 27 years of experience working in the SAP ecosystem to help drive business outcomes. As clients look at transforming their SAP from ECC to S4, she provides an easier alternative to embark on this journey. With that, let's get to the conversation. Hey Sana, welcome to the show.
Hi Sam, a very good afternoon, and thank you so very much for the opportunity. As you know, I'm a huge fan. I follow you guys and really appreciate the time that you're giving me today. Thank you.
I'm super honored to have you. You are a big name in the SAP community, and it's always fun to talk about SAP. So we are going to have a lot of fun.
We are.
If my audience may not know you, do you want to quickly introduce yourself and maybe tell us what you're focusing on these days?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Sam. Thank you. My name is Sana Asher, for those who don't know me, and I've spent about 30 plus years within the IT industry, out of which the last 27 was within the SAP ecosystem. I've had the opportunity to work with many name brands, Accenture, HCL, Capgemini. And about a year ago, I decided to say, you know what, let's do something fun. Let's do something different. And I decided to start my own advisory firm. So today, as of these days, Sam, I am working with people like yourself to get my name out there, social selling, as we call it, right? And working with multiple clients who are now trying to understand how do they make the leap from ECC to S4 HANA. And, you know, that is an impending event that's going to happen in 2027. So a lot of the clients are trying to, know the pieces, but probably don't know the how or where do I even begin, right? I am kind of bridging that gap, Sam, by offering an engagement advisory, to them, and which they can use, and they can start working through that transformation. That is what I'm doing.
Okay, so that is a hot topic in the SAP community, in the ERP community. There are a lot of workloads that need to move. So obviously, I would love to peel layers into that since that is your expert area. But before we do that, we have one of the standard question that we ask every single guest, and that is going to be your perspective on business growth.
And when you say business growth, you mean specifically just for this year, or you mean, in general?
Open-ended question. Open-ended question. You can respond the way you like.
Question. Okay. Perceive it whichever way I like. Okay, I like that. Okay. So I think it's It's in two parts, and
Yeah.
let me explain to you why I say it's in two parts. On one hand, 2024, especially for all of us in the North America market or in the US, is very interesting because it's election year for us,
Yeah.
as you're probably seeing that is happening, and also a lot of movement within the tech community.
Yeah.
So yes, a lot of layoffs, yes, a lot of things happening, but at the very same time, clients are not finding the talent they
Yep.
need. So it's kind of an oxymoron. It's kind of pulling apart, from two different perspectives.
Yeah.
My personal opinion is 2024 is going to be a transformational year, and I apologize for using that word only because I use it literally 50 times a day. So
you don't have to apologize.
no, and the reason I do that, it's overused. So
Yeah, I know.
thank you, for understanding that. But I really think it's transformational for two reasons. Number
Yeah.
one, I think a lot of the hiring that happened over the last 2 or 3 years is kind of getting reset in terms of what do I really want. So
Yeah.
so that's one piece, right? The second piece is within the SAP community or within the SAP ecosystem, talent, the whole succession planning is not happening. So clients today are saying, all my talent in the next 10 years is going to be retiring. How do I now get the Gen Zs and the millennials to
Yeah.
get interested in SAP? So that's another shift that is happening. And from a business perspective, Sam, I think 2024 and beyond is going to be absolutely wonderful for SAP and the business because number one, SAP has shown the world that how they can innovate, how they can automate with AI, with Joule, with coming in on their S4 HANA transformation stories.
Yeah.
And statistically, 73% of the customers that SAP runs today globally have not done anything with S4 HANA.
Yeah.
So you can think about the opportunity that lies ahead of us.
Yeah.
So from a talent perspective, from a business growth perspective, even for the CIOs, the CFOs, right?
Yeah.
How do I create new revenue streams? How do I leverage what I have and make it better? So I think the make it better is definitely the theme for 2024 across a lot of different things.
Yeah, I like it. And it's always fascinating, the kind of, answers I get for this question. For the most part, the reason why I have this question is because the theme of the podcast is supposed to be business growth. So we are trying to connect the dots in terms of, okay, what is going to be business growth for businesses? But it's always interesting. Some people like to relate with talent, some with business growth. It's always mind blowing. So now I want to go back to our topic, which is going to be ECC to S4, I guess. And you also have a story, and I don't know if that story ties back to ECC to S4. If there is correlation, obviously it'll be interesting to hit that. But I want to hit on these two topics. So I don't know if you want to start in telling from how companies can take journey on from ECC to S4, or maybe if the story is right there, then we can probably start with the story itself.
Okay. No, let's start with the ECC to S4, and then I'm going to delve into the story, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Yep. So, Sam, as you're aware, right, ECC has been around for the last couple of years, and SAP is now asking clients to go to S4. And the deadline for that was 2025, but because of COVID, they pushed the deadline to 2027.
Yeah.
Why is SAP even doing that, right? Part of the challenge is with the S4 HANA database and with the S4 HANA automation, keeping the clean core, there is a tremendous amount of opportunity for a business to innovate.
Yeah.
Clients today know that there is opportunity. They know that they have to do it.
Yeah.
I think they don't know the how, right?
Yeah.
They know,
Yeah.
but they don't know the how.
Yeah.
They know the what, they don't know the how.
Yeah.
And that is where people like me are, and there's a lot of people like me who are in the industry, but I think I have a unique proposition because I'm coming to them with a bundled approach, right? I am talking to them about saying, not only can I help you with your data or with your migration, or I can talk to you about how your licensing is going to look, right?
Yeah.
So your current licensing, how does it look into the RISE structure?
Yeah.
I can talk to you about how your custom code is going to look. Do you really want to carry all the baggage from all these years into your S4?
Yeah.
I can talk to them about the data and migration. You and I both know most data and migration projects within a SAP project is 40 to 60% of the cost. I have tools that I have brought to the table that can reduce, that kind of a spend. So there's a lot of, I am going in a complete engagement, 12 weeks, all in, comprehensive. And at the end of the 12 weeks, a client gets a deliverable with a project plan, all of these pieces I mentioned, plus a business use case on how they can take that use case and go to their CFOs, their CEOs, and say, here is why we should do this. So that is our ECC to S4.
Yeah.
Thank
so
you.
I don't know, Amici, if you want to cover the story. I think that is the second part that you wanted to cover.
I definitely want to cover the story. Yeah. Thank you. Absolutely, Sam. So about a year ago, I started talking to one of our clients. This was a life sciences slash med device slash pharma company. So, regulations come in, compliance comes in, all of those pieces come in. They were actually on an acquisition path of a company that was bigger than them, actually. So the company that I was talking to was about $3 billion. And they were going out there and acquiring a company that was $5 billion. And the only reason that sale was going through is because both of them were complementary to each other. So both of them coming together would create a better market space within life sciences slash med devices slash, the pharma industry. And in working with the CIO, the CFO, the directors of IT, the company that was acquiring the acquirer, the acquirer was a company that was running PeopleSoft, and the company that was getting acquired was running SAP. And they were very concerned on how they were going to move everything PeopleSoft to SAP, or also come to one single instance of SAP globally for both these companies. So it meant understanding business processes from both the sides and merging it into one business process. It meant looking at the whole technology stack and saying, okay, what is going to stay, what is going to go, and then picking up all of those pieces and also rolling out it to a global template. Okay, so everything you can think about in an SAP project, Sam, was absolutely there, all the ingredients, right? Just like our Bollywood movies, right? The whole masala was there, right? So that's kind of exactly how it happened. And I started that journey with the CFO, the CEO, and the CIO with a advisory with them. I spent about 6 months with them, talking to them about, where would be the first logical step for them to get started. So understanding, what they were doing, how the business processes were working, from both the sides, the acquisition and the acquirer, from both of them. Then coming to a common template of understanding that this is a common business. These are the 5 common things, but these are the 10 things that none of you guys do. So let's kind of come to that platform. And then talking about buying SAP, getting SAP to a different instance, creating a global template for North America and putting them on a path of going out there and implementing it.
So very interesting story. And I guess, we can probably take so many different directions. I have so many different topics that we want to hit on. So I have some questions before the story, and we'll probably come back to the story as well. Okay. So first thing, one thing that you mentioned is the licensing differences. And I don't know how many people are going to be familiar with what are these differences. So for example, let's say if they are, and by the way, I think this particular conversation is also going to be applicable for any on-prem sort of migrations. I know obviously there are going to be SAP specific nuances, but any on-prem to cloud migration is probably going to go through the similar process. So I think this insight could be helpful for them. So maybe talk about the licensing strategy for ECC, how it was different and how that is going to be different in the S4HANA world.
Okay, absolutely. So Sam, as you were aware, and ECC licenses were perpetual licenses, right? You could go out there, you owned those licenses, right? They were yours to keep. You did whatever you had to do with them, and you could be on-prem, right? Obviously, you were working with the data center and you were running your SAP. With the S4HANA transformation, one of the biggest differences is that the licensing is going to be used by a word of FUE, which is per user. Okay. So in ECC, perpetual licenses meant you would get blocks of users, 1 to 4,000, 1 to 5,000 was one block, 5,000 to 10,000 was another block. And that's how you got it. With this newer licensing, structure, it is really software as a service, or platform as a service, right? SAP is giving you an all-in pricing per user, per user, per license, which covers infrastructure, covers everything that a license would curtail.
Yeah.
What happens is a lot of our clients, right? Companies from 500 million, 5 billion.
Yeah.
Most of them have purchased a lot of software over the years. Their ECC.
Yeah.
Some of the software they have really used, and some of it has been shelfware.
Yeah.
So when I do an assessment with them, I would be in a position through the tool that I'm using of what is actually being used and what is shelfware, right? Two reasons for that. If they are overusing their current licensing, they could be at a risk of getting audited from SAP.
Okay.
Which would lead to a fine, right?
Okay.
If they are underusing it, they now have an opportunity to optimize that, right? And say, you know what? We're just really underusing it. We have a lot of shelfware. Let's scrap that and let's kind of figure out how Rise will look.
Yeah.
But in either scenario, I would be able to come back and tell them, here is where you can optimize these licenses, and here is what your Rise spend will look. So unlike ECC, which was a one-time deal and you were only paying application maintenance and services every year, Rise licenses come in increments of 3 years, of 5 years. So you very clearly need to understand how your bill of material looks, right? When you're buying the licensing.
Yeah.
If you only need 1,000 licenses, you are not going to buy 5,000 and pay that for the next 3 or 5 years. That's just a lot of money, right? So that is a fundamental difference in how licenses is happening today within the SAP world.
So very interesting. So I definitely want some more details there. Number one, obviously the auditing process, I don't know how likely is that. How often SAP audits the licensing. And I'm going to add some more colors there in terms of what I have personally seen in my experience. Okay. So obviously, Oracle is probably known a lot more for their licensing audit, if my recollection is right. I mean, people talk about that. I don't know. I don't know a customer who has been audited, to be completely honest. I have read in the news that they were caught in the audit, but again, I don't know how likely is that. That is number one.
It's a true thing. It's a true thing, Sam. I don't think customers make it up. We've actually spent time with customers who have been fined for millions of dollars. And there is no right or wrong, right? Look, SAP is a software company. That's their business. So they have been audited and they've actually paid fines. So it's true.
So what is the process of audit? Maybe describe that. Because, SAP is not going to come to, for example, let's say if I'm $3 billion business here. SAP is not going to come and they are going to check every single, permission, because I don't think they can do that, because I own this, I own my permission, I own my data.
Correct.
Yes, SAP has sold. Yes, SAP may have authorization to audit, but I don't think they can really get into every single permission set or licensing that. I don't know. I mean, that doesn't sound right. So maybe describe the process of auditing, how that works.
Sure. Okay. No, makes sense. So when I say audit, right?
Yeah.
So for example, you're a $3 billion company, okay? And you are now getting ready to either go to Rise or you've just acquired another organization, okay? And you're thinking, I have one SAP instance. I could probably leverage some of these, users, and I could extend my reach. And I'm making it. I'm oversimplifying it, Sam. Okay, so don't take it in a different way. So when I'm doing an acquisition, I may not intentionally, but I may not have a chance to reach out to SAP and say, you know what, I need 5,000 additional licenses, or I need 2,000 additional licenses. And I've just given super users. I've just incorporated them into my system. I've created those, records. They're using it. Sometimes, and now I'm going to go to Rise. So I have an acquisition, and now I'm going to go to Rise. So you are now sitting in front of SAP telling them, okay, these are my number of users. We went from 1,800 to 4,200. And SAP is going, okay, wait, hold on. But in the system, you're only paying for 1,800. How is it 4,200? Like what is going on here? So that's a challenge for an audit. So that's number one. Okay. I've also seen SAP when they're doing when they're doing the application maintenance services, right? Obviously SAP can pick out any client, any license. But sometimes it may just be obvious through their application maintenance services to say, this usage doesn't make sense, or they kind of catch something weird happening within the account through their tickets or the customer tickets. And that's when they'll come back and say, okay, this doesn't sound right. We need to look a little bit into this. So you know what? There is not one answer, Sam, or one single silver bullet that would make this happen.
Yeah.
But there's definitely trigger events that could get to this kind of a audit, that'll lead to this kind of audit.
So very interesting scenario there. And I'll give you some more colors in terms of what I have seen in my personal experience, to be completely honest. Okay. So obviously there are going to be some controls built up as part of the software itself.
Yes.
So I don't know, unless somebody is literally trying to hack SAP, and I don't know how successful they are going to be in that attempt. Maybe some businesses have done it, but for the most part, if somebody is trying to run a reasonable business, I don't know how many people are really violating the laws of licenses now, because they could be in trouble. I mean, that's illegal in my mind.
I agree. But, you and I have seen lots of things, Sam. So, what can we say?
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, here is the scenario where I have seen, which is, I don't know, I mean, that could be slightly more gray area. Okay. So typically the way this works is, and this is typically done by the channel, to be completely honest, okay? Because obviously they are very smart, they know internals. The customers might not know as much as a partner or the channel. And typically what they are trying to do is they are trying to figure out the loopholes in how to reduce the licensing usage, I guess, so that obviously they want to make sure that they are not paying as much for SAP. So typically in these scenarios, what happens is, so let's say if I have a warehouse app, okay?
Right.
And warehouse app, I have created this warehouse app on top of SAP. I may be using, let's say, a user license to facilitate those transactions. So technically, my warehouse app that I have created, maybe I have 1,000 warehouse workers who are touching that, but as such, they are going through the same license. So technically, to SAP, you are paying one, but
correct. But you have 1,000 people. Yes, makes sense. You're
exactly.
correct.
So that's where you can sort of violate the terms. Technically, legally speaking, if you look at the contract, you are not supposed to do that. I think SAP has figured out lately that companies were doing this. So they have introduced other licenses, such as your application license, which is slightly more expensive. And they have restrictions there in terms of what you can do with your application licenses. Now, I don't know how likely that is in the on-prem world. Obviously, in the on-prem world, people could do crazy things. We both know this.
Yeah, exactly. And that is exactly why I'm saying that you and I are being very honest, Sam, and most companies, I don't think necessarily even think that they're violating something, right? Think about it, right? If I have a laptop that is mine, it's up to me how I use it. I think it just comes to a simple, I'm just saying, simplified it, right?
Yeah.
Of course, there are different ways of looking at that, right? But I don't think anyone intentionally does it, but I think you do land up doing it. And when these audits happen, and we're talking even large enterprise clients, right? Sometimes they've just made a mistake. Sometimes they don't realize it. And when they're doing these audits, they land up paying a couple of $1 million because now it's been a year old and they've been using it. And hey, you have to pay for everything that you're using.
Yeah, so very interesting. So obviously you cannot do this in the cloud world, and I don't know what is the lesson here, for companies. Correct. So I don't know, whether the process that you are really following in changing the mindset. So I don't know whether you are teaching how to use the software right, because this is how you are supposed to use it. So it should not be a shock when you are paying the licensing fee, because that was supposed to be the cost to begin with. It's just that, maybe the way SAP sold, or maybe the way you perceived how software was supposed to be used, there were sort of gray areas, but for the most part, this is the cost of software that you are supposed to pay. It's their IP, so you are simply renting that IP, even though in the on-prem world, it might be considered as owning.
Correct. Yes, owning. Yes, exactly right. Exactly right. And in the cloud world, that has definitely changed.
Yeah. So maybe talk about more nuances, I guess, in terms of licensing. So is this the only thing typically that companies need to take care of, or are there any more layers overall from the licensing perspective that they need to keep in mind that you have seen in your experience?
Sure. So definitely this whole shift, which is from the on-prem to the S4 cloud, right? The Rise, SAP with Rise, right? Yeah. So that's one huge shift. I think the second shift is also the clean core, right? We are hearing that term clean core, right?
Yeah.
So try to keep the core clean, which is just keep your most, current, most of your business processes, like your finance, your sales and distribution, keep that HR, keep that in the core, and everything outside. So which is why this whole BTP is again, launched again to do integrations outside. Look, it's a good thing to do that, to kind of have a different core to do your integrations. But look, you and I both know, Sam, business is dynamic, right?
Yeah.
We've seen with COVID, companies that were doing amazingly well on supply chain, were struggling,
Yeah.
Costco,
Yeah.
Kimberly Clark, you name it, right? So I think what SAP is trying to do, which I understand, the logic behind it,
Yeah.
is to give companies and businesses enough flexibility to be able to run business as
Yeah.
they need to run, right? A airline business is very different from a life sciences business.
Yeah.
A retail business is very different from a hospital business, right?
Yeah.
So I think what SAP is trying to do is saying, look, it's very different,
Yeah.
but they're all the same.
Yeah.
Because all businesses have finance.
Yeah.
They have HR.
Yeah.
They have sales and distribution.
Yeah.
So keep that core within, a clean core, and do
Yeah.
everything outside. So I think the intent and the logic makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's just how you are going to implement it, right? And that is one of the things we coach our clients to do, and say, look, there is just not one way of getting to a destination, right?
Yeah.
You can use Waze, you can use Google, you can use Apple Maps, and you can use your own sense of direction. There's so many different ways to get to the same destination, right? So we definitely do coach our clients to do that.
Yeah, so very interesting. So speaking of that, I guess, let's talk about these business models, right? So I'm actually going back to your story, and you were talking about, you have the pharma company, and the pharma company was really smaller, and they were trying to acquire another company which is in the same industry. But in my mind, when I look at the business model of a pharma company and medical device companies, these two are operationally very different. Okay. So even though, overall from the core operations perspective, they are probably going to be similar, as you are pointing out, finance, HR is probably going to be similar. But if you look at the core operations, meaning how their SKUs are going to be, how their BOMs are going to be, that's where the real, power of an ERP is. If you really want to take advantage of that, if you're using ERP, just let's say for financial reporting, you can probably use accounting system, FP&A system, and you can get there, right? So if you really want to use the power of SAP, it's going to be in your core operations when you are managing all of these larger workloads, probably in one system. So when you are trying to combine this, so I know that you are trying to move from PeopleSoft, which is a very, very, very different beast in general, because PeopleSoft, the way it was designed, it was slightly more service-centric software.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much was the usage when they used PeopleSoft, and I don't know what was the driver in using SAP, whether they were trying to host more operational processes inside the ERP or not. That could be the driver. So maybe touch a little bit more on the story. What was the scope of PeopleSoft in the old co, and how new co was organized, I guess.
Sure. So the old co had about 2,000 people using PeopleSoft.
Okay.
And it was just a decision that someone had made when they started the company, and that's what they stuck with for years, right?
Yeah.
The new co was running SAP, and they were a spin-off of a larger organization, Johnson and Johnson, right? They were a spin-off, so they were always using SAP. And the interesting thing, and as you mentioned, right, everybody's running finance, but the operations are very different, especially when it comes down to products, how they are marketing it, how they're delivering it, how they're creating it, how they're manufacturing it. Actually came together when we started doing the advisory, Sam. So very quickly, when we had the old co and the new co and all the people in the same room, and much before even we got there, they actually took a few months to get to know each other, right? So they did a couple of powwows. They got people together, to get to know each other. But it was very apparent that SAP had the power to do a lot more things that this company was looking to do combined, right? Old co, new co combined. And I think their goal is to go out there and do more acquisitions, do more mergers. So without a rock solid foundation, how are you going to create growth? How are you going to do, automation? How are you going to do innovation? So old co, PeopleSoft, new co, SAP come together and between PeopleSoft and SAP create new business processes and say, this is the new world, right? So best of both worlds coming to a new business process. Now the challenge becomes,
Yeah.
we've got these pieces, the core people understand it.
Yeah.
How do we now tell the rest of the world
Yeah.
how this is going to work?
Yeah.
So North America, being the biggest market, was actually first. They went to North America first. And one of the thought processes was, let's do a global rollout at one time.
Yeah.
So let's do everything together.
Yeah.
Let's do North America, let's do Asia, let's do Europe. And I'm like, no one is ever going to sleep for the next 2 years. We can't do that.
That's fun.
So I said, no, that it's just not going to help. So and of course the CFO was also looking for, how do you stretch your monies, right? Obviously, that's what they want to do. So we decided to do North America first and said, let's start there. Let's build the template. Let's get everything pieced. It's the biggest market. Let's get all the pieces right. And while we are building the template, if there is things that needed to change, we have the opportunity to tweak that, not just by localization, but also by how businesses operate in different parts of the world, and tweak those processes to work there, right? Which is exactly how it kind of panned out. So North America first, then Europe, then EMEA and, Asia.
Okay, so very interesting. So I'm going to peel some more layers there in this particular approach. Obviously there could be many different approaches, as you correctly pointed out. So this could work, let's say, if you don't have any sort of operational synergies between the companies. And I don't know what was the architecture overall from the enterprise perspective. I don't know what was the scope of SAP. Was it only financial reporting? If it is only financial reporting, it's very easy to, figure out how you can consolidate different regions, and you can create the template, move template. I know it's not easy, but it's not as difficult as having the real operational synergies. Okay. So when I say real operational synergies, those are going to be, for example, let's say if you have your customer or vendor shared, or if you have your item shared, where you are literally, using these things in between the process. When you are going to do that, obviously that's a far bigger transition. It requires far more planning overall in that. Now, let me throw you one more curveball there. So let's say if you have shared service model, and I don't know if you had shared services model in this case, right? That could make it even more complicated because you need to plan for shared services. So how would you approach these two things? Let's say if you had this, and I don't know, again, I don't know, how the installation was in this particular case. Maybe you can touch a little bit more. What was the synergy between these companies?
Sure. So two big curveballs, right? So I think going back to my original point, Sam, the first exercise was to consolidate the pieces from old code to new code to create the new business process, right? So that was the first thing, which is what they did across the board. They did have shared services, but they decided to touch the shared services as the last piece, right? Okay. And it was just operational efficiencies were just not under financial reporting because both companies, old co, new co, had different company codes, obviously, right? So the very first thing was to create a simple, brand new business process, old co, new co. So A, B equals to C. So C is exactly what we're going to focus on.
Right.
So now C as a company has all new business processes, new, company codes, new financial structures, new reporting, new manufacturing processes, all of that, right? Because both of these companies, old co, new co, had products that complemented each other. And there was a tremendous opportunity to upsell, cross-sell across both these organizations.
Right.
So together, they came up with one standard product list. One standard shipping list, or, one standard way of buying or selling and distributing. So that is where the bulk of the work went, Sam, for at least about a year.
Interesting. So maybe touch on that process. I mean, this could be almost like a political battle to win over when you are dealing with 10,000 people with different emotions, right? Different level of emotions. Everybody's going to have their own ideas in terms of, how to do things right. For example, let's say if you are trying to consolidate, and this is a big deal, when you are trying to consolidate customer master, product master, even when we are going to have companies like 50 people, even in that, it could be very difficult process, to be completely honest. When
Yeah,
executives are fighting with each other, I guess, they all have their own competing ideas.
exactly.
So how do you manage that process? And, I don't know if you can go back and if you have any sort of twists and turns that you had in the story when you were doing this, maybe touch on that.
Sure. I think a lot of us get very emotional about everything, right? This is my process. This is my company, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's exactly what you need to remind people,
Yeah.
that it's all us. It's us humans, right?
Yeah.
So yes, there was a lot of push and pull.
Yeah.
The acquirer was telling the acquiree, "Oh, I'm the boss.
Yep.
You got to listen to me."
Obviously.
But the acquiree had the SAP knowledge, right? So
Yeah.
they were a one up on that side.
Yeah.
We definitely saw those battles, but I think what actually prevailed and why
Yeah.
cool heads prevailed
Yeah.
is because both these companies, old company, new company, were very conscious
Yeah.
that only if they came together as
Yeah.
one, they
Yeah.
would grow. I think
Yeah.
the fundamental reason for making the acquisition was exactly that. And I think the CFO, the CEO, and even the CIOs, plus the directors, did a phenomenal job of letting every single person know that this is the core reason why we are here. And I've not seen it before, but I did see it here, is that every meeting we would go to, they would actually start with the why.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was never the how. It was, why are we doing this?
Right.
And they kept asking that question at every meeting, at every step of the way.
Yeah.
And, very clearly and very soon, the why was very, very clear, Sam.
Yeah.
So we would go walk into a meeting, you would have it on your whiteboard. Why are we doing this?
Right.
So I think that really helped, the why, saying it really helped, and definitely cool heads prevailed, right? But to your point, integrating these pieces is hard.
Yeah.
But I think the willingness to do it was there, right? They really wanted to make sure that their customers were getting a bigger breadth of the products.
Yeah.
There was opportunity to upsell, cross-sell. And if they came together as one, they could now be a pretty recognizable force within the industry and open up to more acquisitions and all of those pieces. So I think they did a decent job there, believe it or not. And they had organizational change management, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah.
Even the advisory, that's one of the things I had recommended to them. And they're like, but that's the thing that always gets scratched off. And I'm like, that's exactly why you need it. So, which is why we got OCM in there.
Yeah.
And one of the things I did, or what I always do when I start off a transformation like this, is I give out everybody a book.
Yeah.
It's called Who Moved My Cheese?
Yeah.
It's a very, very old book, and it's about 20, 30 pages. Okay.
Right.
And I gave it to everyone a week before, and I said, guys, this is homework. Okay. Everybody read this book, come back. And the book talks about how if you don't move with your cheese and how you don't move with the times, you will just become redundant.
Yeah.
And I think everybody came to that meeting completely understanding that they will be redundant if they don't move with their cheese.
Yeah, great story. And time flies when two experts are talking. So this was a great conversation. I don't know if you're going to have any sort of closing advice for our listeners.
The only advice is ask for advice. You know what? What I've seen is if you ask for advice, there are enough people to help. Yeah. Don't go at it alone. I think your community, Sam, what you are building, and so many other people who are building these SAP communities. Please ask a question. There is no stupid question. Ask for help. You know what? And do good work. I think there's enough work for all of us. So. Yeah. No, I think everyone's going to do fantastic.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I think my personal takeaway from this conversation is going to be ask for help, ask for right help. You definitely need that. On that note, thank you so much for your time. Again, this has been a powerful episode, Sana.
Thank you so much, Sam. I appreciate your time.
Of course.
I cannot thank our guests enough for coming on the show, for sharing their knowledge and journey. I always pick up learnings from our guests, and hopefully you learned something new today. If you'd like to learn more about Sana, head over to integrityresourcemanagement.com. It's integrityresourcemanagement.com. Links and more information will also be available in the show notes. Also, don't forget to subscribe and spread the word among folks with similar backgrounds. If you have any questions or comments about the show, please review and rate us on your favorite podcasting platform or DM me on any social channels. I'll try my best to respond personally and make sure you get help. Thank you, and I hope to catch you on the next episode of the WBS Podcast.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.